Alright, so welcome back to Alien Artifacts, part 2 of some extra card information. Now, so obviously the planets, which we went over at the last part of the last video, were very easy to understand. And, after getting halfway through the game, I came to realize that I needed some of those planets on the operational side as well. So, but another thing I didn't really understand at first was these kinds of cards here for the ships. Now, obviously, putting a ship in the operational position in your empire only really helps you with attacking. Now, if you're going to attack another player or attack an alien system, it doesn't really matter at that point because I understand that pretty well. But so that side of the card really didn't bother me. But this side, the logistics side, some of them were a little harder than others to understand. So I thought we'd kind of go over them because there were a lot of these cards with ongoing abilities. Increase your assembly limit for the build of a ship action by 1. Now, well, that's cool. I was like, well, because normally when you build a ship, you can use 2 resources from your hand or any additional resources you've saved up, because you can spend action saving resources for your ships, technologies, and planets. But, however, with that said, this one allows you to increase the assembly limit by 1. So you could use all 3 cards in your hand, plus any resources you might have saved up. And I did not understand that too well until halfway through the game, because I was like, well, what's the point of playing more of these? Because there are tons of these that increase your assembly limit for the build of a ship action by 1. What's the point of adding another one if your hand limit is 3? I was like, what's the point? But then that's where the planets come into their use on the operational side of a planet. Because then you can add the resources that are on these cards here on your planets to increase your hand limit for building a ship. Because your assembly limit would increase by 1 for every one of those you had. And you might get quite a few of those of the same kind. I mean, we got one for the ships. We got one for the technologies. Here's one for the planets. See, here's another one for the technologies. So if you had 2 of these in your empire on the logistics side, then you could use the resources as an addition to increase the assembly limit by 1 more, making it 4 or something like that. But I didn't really understand that at first. So I was very hesitant of putting more ships in the logistics side for these kinds of abilities. Now, I did understand this pretty well. You can increase your assembly limit for the trade action by 1. That was pretty simple. And drawing a defense plan, and etc. But, like I said, some of these ships were, which are all pretty basic. These ships are pretty basic. The ability seems pretty basic. Now that I understand that you could just, add resources from your planets to build ships. But in reality, you're probably not going to do that too often. Maybe towards the end of the game, if you want to build some more ships. But it's easier, if you ask me, it's easier just to save up resources as an action, instead of trying to get a bunch of these ships in the logistics side. So that just leaves the technologies, which are probably the hardest to understand. Some of them are easy, but some of them are not. Now, the logistics side is what's most of this is actually what's on the logistics side of what I didn't understand at first. But some of them were easy to understand and some weren't. When you build a ship, ignore the assembly limit if you only spend ships. So that's pretty easy to understand, because some of the resource cards have the yellow resource, which can be used as any of the 3 colors. It's sort of like a wild color. You can, if you think of Uno, you had those wild cards that could be used for, all the different colors you wanted to choose from. And that's basically what you can use these yellow ones. You can use them for the ships, you can use them for the technologies, and you can use them for the planets. So what it's saying is, as long as you only spend the ships and you don't use the yellows when building a ship, you can ignore the assembly limit, which means then you could have as many cards as you wanted, because it doesn't say add to the assembly limit by 1. It just says ignore it completely. And so that, now that I understand that, that's pretty easy to understand. And some of them are just simply easy. But there are some out there some of them, and as soon as I find one that's in the operational side, there was one in particular in the operational side that I just didn't quite understand at first. Now it makes a little bit more sense, but it still could be very difficult to do. As soon as I find it, though... No, that's not it. It's definitely the technology part. Now, I will say this while I'm looking for it. The operational side is basically to help you score victory points either while you're playing the game or at the end of the game. Now, it works for actually both of them. You can use each of these in your empire during the game for victory points, but also you'll score additional victory points at the end of the game as well for each of these you have. So having a lot of your technologies in the operational side is good if you want to score lots of victory points at the end of the game, or while you're playing, for instance. But there was at least one that I had a very difficult time understanding, and now I can't even find it. Where did it go? There was definitely more than one of these in here, so just bear with me until I find it. I'll know it when I see it in the operational side of the card. And am I going to have to go through the whole pile to find it, or what? Okay, here we go. It was on the bottom after all. All right. This one here. Okay, so 3 operational technologies. During the game, when you score this card, it's going to score you 1 victory point if you have 3 operational technologies. Meaning you have to have 3 technologies on, now, this is what I don't understand. So, 3 operational technologies that score 4 or more victory points. At first, I didn't understand this. Now I do. So, you'd have to have 3 of these technologies on this side, I believe, on the operational side, in your empire, for this one here, to score you some victory points. That's what that means. Otherwise, it would just say 3 technologies. If it said 3 technologies without the operational in the mix, then you could have it on either side to score you victory points. But it's saying you'd have to have 3 operational technologies on this side in your empire to score you some victory points. Now, here's another thing. 3 operational technologies that score 4 victory points and more. With that in mind, you'd have to have technologies that score you. This is what I don't fully grasp still. Now, it seems to me that all of the technologies that score victory points on the operational side have 4 or more victory points on them. So, the only thing I can think of is you would have to have 3 operational technologies in play in your empire that currently can score you 4 or more victory points, either that score more or 4 victory points. Meaning, let's look at some. For instance, let's say I had 4 operational planets, and I had this card too. Well, that would score me, during the game, that would score me 2 victory points. So that would add, that would be 2. That would be half of the equation of 3 operational technologies that score 4 or more victory points. Meaning I would still have to have at least 1 technology that could score me 2. Now, this would be a long battle. Because if I had, like, for instance, only four planets but they weren't on the operational side, well, I'd only get 1 victory point. So I would have to have 4 of those technologies that would score me a ton of points during the course of the game for this to score me 3 operational technologies that score 4 victory points or more to get that for 2, and at the end of the game for 4. And so that's what that means. At least that's what I think that means. So you have to have a lot of operational technologies, and they have to be able to score you a total of either 4 or more or 8 or more victory points in order for you to score this particular card here. So you'd have to have a lot of technologies in the operational side to score you that card, sort of, for that card to score you a lot of points. But if you did, it would score you a ton of points because you'd also have all these other cards scoring you tons of points. But if all of your cards are only scoring you 1, or let's say I only had, for this one here, it says the lowest one, you'd have to have 4 planets. If I had this in my technology empire, for instance, but I only had 3 planets, I wouldn't score any victory points for this card here. And so then it wouldn't count towards that one card that said I need to have operational technologies that score 4 victory points or more, because I wouldn't be getting any victory points for that card. So therefore, it would only count, it wouldn't count at all, because I would have to have 3 technologies scoring me 4 victory points or more. So that is a little harder to understand for sure. And I actually avoided playing with it in the first game because of that reasoning. And I'm still not 100% sure that is what that means. But I hope I got it right on that, regardless. So the operational technologies were definitely some of the hardest things. But obviously, some of these logistic sites are also pretty useful too, because a lot of them can gain you victory points. Like when you build a logistic ship, meaning you build a ship that's on the logistic side, you gain 1 victory point. Well, that's pretty easy to understand. But then you also gain +1 victory point if there are no ships of the same type already in your empire. Now, there are 4 different types technologies, planets, and ships can be. And so we have this one here on the left corner is to indicate the difference. So there's that one that looks like an extermination type thing. We have this one that looks almost like a city, for instance. We have this one that kind of reminds me of their cycle sign. And, this one sort of looks like an eye. So those are the 4 different types of cards that you could have, of icons. So this is actually Explore, for instance. That's the Explore icon. This one here is the Expand icon. Actually, no. This one here is the Exploit icon. This one is Exterminate. This one's Exterminate. And this one is Expand. So this one is the Expand type icon, and there's 4 of them, like I said. And so, knowing that makes it a little easier to understand. But, so, anyways, I think I've kind of gone over the majority of the cards that were very difficult to understand at first. But since I've played the game through and watched a full playthrough of the game, I kind of understand more of how this game works. I think I still have to say I don't know how to really formulate a strategy at this point. Now, maybe after a few times of playing, I can form a strategy, but it's really kind of a drag because I like to try to formulate a strategy the very first time I play a game, and I couldn't formulate any sort of strategy the first time through. And I still don't understand how, I thought I was doing really well with Star Union. I was scoring tons of points throughout the game, and the other faction wasn't really scoring much of anything. The League, they weren't scoring as much. But I still only won by 1 point. So I don't understand really how that is. Because, like I said, I like to formulate a strategy, and I didn't really do that with this game. So, it's going to take a while I think, for anybody to formulate a strategy playing this game. They'd have to play it a few times, I think, before you'd probably figure out a strategy. The only strategy I can think of is either starting with the clone clans or community. That's the only strategy I've come up with. And that's only a starting strategy of which one to choose. Don't choose a faction based on looks. Oh, this looks cool. Let's choose that. Don't choose it, because I don't think the Star Union is the best. I think these two are the best. They aren't necessarily the prettiest. I suppose I like them better than the League and Bionics and the one I can't pronounce. But anyways, choose a faction that you think you would have a fun time playing. Like, if you want to discover a ton of planets, the community is the faction for you. If you want to explore a ton of planets, this is the faction for you. If you want to develop lots of technologies, this is the faction for you. If you don't want the setups to be any different from each other, and then you would choose both of these, because they're exactly the same. Now, these two, the Bionics and the one I can't pronounce, they have almost identical. They don't have complete identical setups, but they're still pretty similar to each other, and they're pretty similar to these two as well as the community, obviously. These 5 here are almost identical, but these 2 are exactly identical. They're like twins. And these 3 come pretty close. Clone Clans has the most unique setup of them all, because you only put 4 technologies under construction. That's the setup. You don't do anything with ships, you don't do anything with planets. You just put 4 technologies under construction. In this one, you put a ship under construction and one of 2 technologies under construction, and you get to put a planet in your empire, one operational planet in your empire. That's really cool. I like that a lot. And then this one, you get a ship and a planet under construction, and you get to put one operational technology. So that's pretty cool. And then Bionics, this one does a ship and then one of 2 technologies and 1 planet under construction. And this one is almost exactly the same, except you get to put 1 ship in operation in your empire. And the other ones are the same. Same thing with this one. You get to put 1 operational ship in your empire, and so these exactly are the same. And this one comes pretty close, obviously, as well. And some of the others do too. Well, I hope these last two videos explained some of the cards a little bit. I hope you guys got something out of these 2 videos to help you play this game. Because like I said, there wasn't really any additional information on how the card mechanisms work, and there's still some that I just don't really understand, fully grasp how to play with yet. But I hope this will get you through the game at least. Alright, well, thank you guys for watching. And like I said, leave a comment if I got one of the card mechanisms wrong or something like that, because I want to improve on this game. Thank you for watching.